You tell by the look of me. Why am I here? I'm here because, as they said in the introduction, I'm an artist and an entertainer, you know, and I'm trying my best to use my position to just raise awareness for organisations like Pieta House and St. Pat's. And some people think that it's kind of, I don't know, inappropriate or disrespectful for me to be speaking on issues of mental health and stuff with a bag on my head. But the way I look at it is, if dressing up like a big clown causes members of the public to look at an issue like this, then I'm happy to be that clown. Do you know what I mean? Because you don't have to be solemn to be serious about something. Do you know what I mean? Solemnity is a kind of a useless human emotion, and solemnity is what can cause a lot of the problems that have people to have mental health issues. Because solemnity is all about rules and shame and unhelpful shit. But to be serious and to speak with something with a serious context and intent, you can do that with a bag in your head. You can do it with a pair of knickers on your head. It's grand. Why is mental health so important to me? The reason mental health is so important to me is obviously I've had my own battles with it. I used to suffer very badly from anxiety, which turned into agoraphobia, which then turned into depression. I managed to free myself of this completely, mainly through self-help. I did a little bit of counselling, but mainly through using things like emotional intelligence and CBT for myself, just from books. And I went from agoraphobia to being able to speak to an entire room full of people. Granted, with a bag in my head, might be a little bit of a safety mechanism, but I can do it and I'm grand, you know. The other reason mental health affects my friends, all of my friends that I know down in Limerick. It affects my community. But as well, why mental health is so important is that it's, in terms of something to focus on, it's intersectional. If you look at the homelessness crisis, a lot of that is caused by poor mental health. A lot of these people who are homeless, not every one of them is so poor that they can't afford to live somewhere. They might have been failed by the system. They might be suffering with not only mental health, mental illness. There could be people with schizophrenia out there on the streets who've been failed. The other thing is mental health. It can relate to addiction, which is another huge issue that also correlates with homelessness. And I don't necessarily mean specifically addiction to substances. It can be dependency. You could have a dependency on alcohol, a dependency on fags, dependency on chocolate. You could have a dependency on living your life living your life by other people's approval. Do you know what I mean? That's not a great way for anyone to live. Education. I made a bollocks on my leaving cert. I did that not because of a lack of cognitive ability. I wasn't dumb, but I didn't have emotional tools. I didn't have emotional tools or emotional maturity for me at the age of 16, 17 to be able to set goals for myself. When you're emotionally confused, when you don't have personal emotional language, things like deadlines and goals and even being able to see the outcome of a project, these things aren't available to you. Because you have to have self-belief, and to have self-belief you have to have a kind of a solid grounding and understanding of what you're feeling in that moment. A lot of people don't have this. I certainly didn't have it when I was 16 and ended up with a very disappointing result from school. I look back, I could have nailed it even cert, but I didn't have emotional tools. So for those three reasons, that's for me, that's why I choose mental health as my thing, as a celebrity will say, where I put my effort into it, because it's like a web. It goes out into everything, all aspects of society. At the moment in the country, there's a mental health crisis, which means that the people who are fighting it are divided between. I include myself in the proactive crowd, in that I'm not an expert. I can't do anything for people with mental illness. I can't do anything for people in crisis. But I'm a proactive speaker in that I promote things like emotional intelligence, cognitive behavioural therapy, mindfulness, all these things. I try and reach people who are kind of feeling okay but are at risk. Then you've got the reactive people like St. Pat's and Pieta House. These are the people who have had to step in because the government don't have the facilities at the moment to actually deal with people in crisis. That's why I put as much support as I can behind the likes of Pieta House. I think it's one of the best services in Ireland at the moment. I also try and help people to tolerate the unavoidable suffering that is human existence. that's what life is. Life contains suffering. That's a given. You cannot avoid suffering in life. It's part of the beautiful tapestry that is being alive. You know what I mean? Suffering can be class. You can learn loads from suffering. I look at things that I've learned in my life. It's through fuck-ups and pain. But emotional discomfort and emotional unease and sadness, a lot of it is actually caused not by real suffering that happens in the here and now, not by events, but by our attitudes towards suffering. About 80% of what causes people pain is worrying about shit that might happen or shit that has already happened. Now, neither of those things are real. And it's our attitude towards those things that cause the discomfort. So I try and bring to the public the realization that suffering is inevitable. And if you can learn to have a more rational attitude towards what causes your suffering, you can avoid all this unnecessary shit. Do you know what I mean? And it's fairly basic. I wish I was taught that when I was 4 years of age in school and not taught about religion. I can't do a talk without getting a dig in, lads. One of the best things I've seen over the past 3 or 4 years is most definitely mental health. The conversation around mental health is becoming normalised. It's destigmatising big time. It's becoming something that, like, my ultimate, I would love to see a future whereby any person can sit down with their friends and say that they went to see a counsellor the same way that we would say it now about going to a dentist. Like, you've no problem telling your friends, oh, I had to get a fucking root canal yesterday, it was really painful. Imagine being able to say to your buddies, I went to a counsellor and I spoke about my ma. Yeah, it really brought up a lot, I cried. But wouldn't that be class? Do you know what I mean? To have a society like that, that'd be so healthy. So it's great to see over the past 3 or 4 years. I mean, I think what's pushed mental health into the mainstream conversation, the recession caused a lot of it, obviously, because with the recession and the gloomy environment, that's where we started to see these massively unacceptable suicide figures. So that caused people to speak about it more and more and to normalise it a bit. Nice one. You hear the crackle in my voice. But that's a great thing that we've seen, is the normalisation of conversation around mental health. But there still exists a very huge stigma around self-harm. I don't even understand it. Do you know what I mean? I don't have a frame of reference for self-harm. It's something I want to learn about. That's the good thing about this conference today, and that's hopefully all of us here today will learn a little bit more about it. One of the questions I got asked when I was asked to speak at this conference was like, what would you say to somebody who is being presented with a person who's self-harming? Now, looking out into the audience today, I'd say there's probably a lot of people working in the helping professions, a lot of counsellors, things like that, but I'm guessing as well there's a lot of just teachers or community workers and people who are just frightened and don't have a clue. What I would say regarding if someone does present with something like self-harm, there's a thing in psychotherapy called the core conditions, right? And these 3 things, if you can learn these things, you can be a help in the moment to that person. The 3 things are empathy, right? So if somebody presents to you with not just self-harm, anything, empathy, you put yourself in the other person's shoes. You try and see what it's like what is it like for them in that moment? Really, really try. Second thing is congruence. You put yourself in your own shoes. You step into your own shoes and you have an understanding of what are you actually feeling right now? What is the emotion that you're experiencing? And does your outward behaviour communicate what you're actually feeling? Because if somebody comes to you with something and your initial gut reaction is maybe sadness or fear, and then you try and hide that by projecting out happiness or irritation, you're not being congruent. And the person who's coming to you for help, they can read that unconscious language and they don't feel safe in that moment. So congruence, empathy with yourself, that's a very important one, and it's a huge skill to learn just for your own fucking mental journey anyway. Third thing is unconditional positive regard. Be cautious not to judge the person's shoes. Don't be looking at their shoes thinking they're dirty. By which I mean, no matter what the person says to you, try to hold back on these rules that society has. Like I mentioned earlier with solemnity. If someone someone says, I've been slicing my wrists up with a blade for the past week, it's natural to respond to shock with that. I mean, that is shocking to hear. And the skill is to try and learn to take that as it is, because for that person, that's their reality at that moment. And for them, that feels quite normal for them. It might not feel normal for us if we're not going through it. Those three things can allow you to be of great assistance for the person in that moment and to create a feeling of safety, which allows you then to go on to the next step, which is contact a professional service like PA the House. Gain the person's trust and then contact a service like PA the House. Or, break confidentiality and say, I may need to speak to your guardian, shit like that, you know what I'm saying? I've got really crap notes, that's why this thing is as broad and awkward as a 40-year-old man of the dead. So that's about the gist of it, anyway, lads, you know what I mean? So the best thing we can all do today is open our ears and listen, do you know what I mean? And I'm excited because, like I said, I know very little about self-harm. It's something I'm not too familiar with. I don't know anyone who's been through it. It's this thing that I know that exists out there because it is so stigmatised. So what I want to walk away from this conference today, I want to have a language for me to be able to destigmatise self-harm when I go out and do my plastic bag thing to the members of the public. Yort, thank you very much.